This episode is a bit different than previous episodes. It's my birthday episode. Well, it will be released a few days before my actual birthday, which is April 1st. Yes, April Fool's Day. And for those of you who'd like a little history lesson, although no biblical scholar or historian is known to have mentioned a relationship, some have expressed the belief that the origins of April Fool's Day may go back to the Genesis flood narrative. The mistake of Noah sending the dove out of the ark before the water had abated on the first day of April has been memorialized by sending others on some sleeveless or fool's errand, similar to that ineffectual message upon which the bird was sent by the patriarch. Poor Noah, to be remembered for that. What I found most interesting is that the day is not a public holiday. I really thought it was growing up because it was my birthday, right? A public holiday. Except Odessa, Ukraine, where the 1st of April is an official city holiday, locally known as Humorina, perfectly named in my opinion. Interestingly enough, it wasn't until I made the decision to create a podcast fundraiser for this episode and began to think about my introduction that I discovered this myself. So for this city holiday in Ukraine, Ukrainian refugees will benefit, I hope, from my April 1st birthday fundraiser, and that truly is no joke. The reason that this is a special episode is that birthdays give us pause, often to celebrate the year which we are about to enter. This year, as it continues to unfold, seems to carry so much wrong in the world that needs to be righted. And I wanted to dedicate my birthday to a cause. The entire purpose of Small and Gutsy is to raise the visibility of smaller nonprofits and social impact organizations under 10 million to support their sustainability in the hopes that someone will listen and learn about them, maybe donate, find a job, volunteer, invest in. You know the drill by now. To date, we have released 56 episodes of organizations, and each one has great merit and is worth considering for support. However, the situation in Ukraine is incredibly painful for the people there, relatives and friends here, and for those of us helping the huge number of refugees fleeing for their lives. My mother had to flee her birthplace, and I can only imagine what her parents felt and endured with a small child in tow, leaving behind everything they had known and worked for. That is happening now. Today's episode highlights an incredible organization that is affiliated with JNF, Jewish National Fund. And yes, JNF doesn't fit our criteria of being under $10 million, but the affiliate organization, the Lauder Employment Center, known as the LEC, certainly does. I chose to not only highlight them for this episode, but ask you to please consider a donation for my birthday. Their mission is to diversify economic opportunities in Israel by providing career services through employee partnerships, training, resources, career counseling, and actual internships that often turn into jobs for folks choosing to move to either the southern or northern part of Israel in order to reduce the overcrowding in the typical larger cities known as the Triangle Cities, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Yafo. Note both the Hebrew and Arab combination name illustrating both identities, and Haifa. This is not and never has been limited to Jews living in Israel, but all people. The LEC was founded in 2015 through the generosity of philanthropist Ronald Lauder, initially in the Negev, the southern part of Israel, and has been incredibly successful through their partnership between Ben-Gurion University of the Negev and Jewish National Fund USA through their operating partner, the nonprofit Eretz Ir. They, similar to so many nonprofits during the pandemic, began to pivot to address the issues that were most needed, and during the pandemic, rather than close their doors, they expanded to replicate the success they have had building employment opportunities in the Negev. And in November 2020, they opened the LEC in Akko, the northern part of Israel. And today, we find ourselves as a global community in yet another crisis, the resettling of Ukrainian refugees who have landed in Israel. The LEC is welcoming them with offers of sustainability through employment to speedily get them adapted to a new place that they didn't choose, but due to circumstances are being forced to accept. This doesn't mean that Israel isn't an amazing place. It is. But when someone is fleeing their homeland without the time, energy or ability to think through this transition, it has to be incredibly horrific, shocking, and at times paralyzing. The LEC is filled with incredibly dedicated people, two of whom you will meet today. And this episode touches my heart because supporting others makes us all feel less helpless and less hopeless. I am beyond delighted to introduce Megan Turner Chernia, married almost a week, Director of Partnerships, and Karine Guz-Levine, Director of Economic Development. There's a third I just want to highlight who couldn't be here today, Anat Bondarenko. I'm going to terribly hurt her name here, so hopefully we'll correct it, who just arrived from Ukraine, having been born in Israel and having spent most of her life in Ukraine and fled due to this crisis, and has jumped in to help with refugees and is spearheading the emergency program for Ukrainian refugees. The LEC was really established to support employment and is actually doing this, but in this incredibly meaningful way. So let's get started. Welcome, Megan and Karen. Share with me initially your passion about LEC, how you got involved, and then currently what you're doing to work with refugees. So I don't know who wants to start, and just introduce yourselves.
I guess I can start. Is that okay, Karen? First of all, thank you, Laura. I feel like that you know the Lauder Center better than we do even. That was an amazing introduction, so thank you so much for that. My passion with the Lauder Center started a long time ago. I made Aliyah to Beersheba almost 10 years ago.
Megan, sorry to interrupt, but you made Aliyah, and some of my listeners might not know what that is. So share a bit about what that is and where you're originally from.
To make Aliyah is the phrase that we use for a Jewish person immigrating to the land of Israel. I am originally from Arkansas, and yes, there are not that many Jews in Arkansas, and now there are even less.
And you have no accent.
I do when I'm angry. You should ask my husband. Or when I've been speaking to family who's still back in Arkansas, I can adopt the accent very well. Most people who are coming to Israel are going to go to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, like you said, the triangle areas. I said, no, I want to go somewhere different. I've heard of this place. Let's try Beersheba. And I fell in love. I have actually watched this building that I'm sitting in currently in Beersheba change face. It was a totally abandoned building for a long time. This part of the city was not necessarily a part of the city that people would want to live in. But then, unbeknownst to me, this place starts to take shape, and there's this amazing center that comes out of it. And I start seeing the center as like a new immigrant with a place where we do community events. You know, I was taking part in some employment forums, and I was like, wow, this place is really, really special. It would be awesome to work there one day. Thank God, on March 1st, 2020, I started working at the partner organization Eretz Ir that runs the Lauder Center in a whole list of different roles, and finally found myself doing partnership work and resource development with the Lauder Center over the past few years. I'm in love with it, everything we do. I also love the fact that it's all women who run the Lauder Centers. Very important to put on the table. So Karen and I are an excellent example of the strong expert women who are doing amazing things to help a huge part of what's going to make the periphery areas of Israel actually thrive. Because if we can do all these other things to make the quality of life much better, but if we don't provide high quality employment opportunities, then people aren't going to stay.
Most countries should really think about doing that, because when the cities get overcrowded, there are all sorts of issues that come up as a result of that. Unemployment is only one piece of it. So I think that kind of planning, sort of country planning versus urban planning, is so essential. And you've done an amazing job of being part of that. So kudos to you. Karen, your turn. Introduce yourself, please.
Okay, I'm very excited to be here. You know, it's my first time to speak in a podcast, and this podcast in English.
We're happy to have you.
This is amazing. My passion to work in a Lauder Center, I think, start before I knew a Lauder Center exists. Because I was working at an employment organization that helped people from the rural area, small business, small employment organizations that help people from kibbutzim and moshavim, in the Negev, to find jobs. Because the kibbutzim and the moshavim went through a very big crisis few years ago when the agriculture got smaller in Israel.
Those are really communities that are completely agriculturally related and really separate from cities, further from the city environment, right?
So when I work there, I find there is so many problems in the Negev or in the periphery that at the field of employment, that's make young adults to leave the area and go to the center, to Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem, because they don't see their future here. So I start to think, how can I make a bigger impact on the whole area of the Negev? And then I had this opportunity in Eretz Ir, in the Lauder Center. They won a big tender of the government, of the Welfare Bureau, to help young adults from weak environment, to help them to involved in the employment market. So we got a lot of money from the government. And Eretz Ir had to recruit a team. So they called me to be the manager of this team. And we had this tender for this initiative. It's called Working Together Initiative. And we had this initiative in Eretz Ir for 3 years. And then I fell in love and I stay in the Lauder Center.
It's amazing. One of my early internships, actually, when I was in social work school, was in what was called in this country supported work. And it was helping individuals get off of welfare in this country and into the workplace so they could have some independence and sustainability versus government assistance. So there's some pros and cons to how that program worked, but it sounds to me like this is twofold. One is that it was really these marginalized individuals who really didn't have opportunities from 18 to 24 where you could really help them find both skills and resources and, ultimately jobs to sustain themselves and then grow from the rural to cities that were not overcrowded, particularly in the north and south. So it's really an incredible planning strategy, but also it's an individual supportive strategy because it allows the individual to find both not only economic independence, but I want to suggest that it's incredibly building self-esteem. For me, at least, having interned and worked in an environment like that, when folks feel like they have relevance through the work that they are doing, one feels better as a contributor. And so you're doing this, both as your work here and even previous to this, your employment work altogether. So it's truly admirable. And I imagine you see folks shift and change as they grow into those work. So it's just beautiful.
Can I point out that the three of us are social workers?
That is interesting.
Another thing that binds us all together.
Sure. I'm just waiting for you to invite me over there to work for a short period of time, right? I'm coming.
Karen, take note of this. We have an
I wrote
recruit.
it down. It's record.
Absolutely. I'll follow in Rhonda Foreman's footsteps. She doesn't know I mentioned her on this podcast, but I am. She went over for several months and has volunteered there as, I think, one of the first American volunteers that didn't permanently move over there. So she is creating the groundwork for everybody else, right, to do that. But I think it would be very wonderful to have that experience. Of course, I don't know Hebrew, so I'd have to learn it. But I want to get back to sort of the base of the Lauder Center in terms of programs that you offer. I mentioned a few, but I'd love for you to share as much as you can about that and how you help folks. And then I want to move into the emergency situation currently and what you're really doing for folks who are emigrating who didn't necessarily want to and have to rebuild their lives, whether they return to Ukraine or not. It's something that they have to adjust to for the interim and how you all are jumping in. It's incredible. So start with just the programs and how they operate.
So Karen is the professional brain behind all of this, and I'll just be her spokesperson then. But so, you mentioned a very long list of the things that we do at the Lauder Center, and now it depends on which Lauder Center we're talking about. Obviously, things that we do in the South are a little bit different than the things that we do in the North. Every program that we put into the field, we have mapped to make sure that there's a need and an ability, like the ability to sustain a program like that. We can't just, come and say, we have a great idea. We have to actually have like some basis for that great idea. And in the work that we do at the Lauder Center, we are not only helping young adults find jobs and helping Negev and Galilee companies to find more high quality workers, we're also helping small businesses. So that's another aspect to kind of just put on the table. This year, we're really focusing a lot on having interview days and employee spotlight days at the center itself, just to get as much movement and buzz around the available job positions that are out there, and to help make the connection between the people who are actually looking for the jobs. We're really excited too this year to go back to doing our very large employers conference that we normally do, but COVID has stopped that, and it's that's really a culmination of the work that our Human Resource Directors Forum does. This is a forum that meets 4 times a year. These are HR directors that, in the past were kind of in competition with each other for the limited, quote unquote, limited human capital in the area, who are now understanding that there is a lot of power in working together with each other, and that they're able to build capacity, and they're able to continue strengthening the entire ecosystem. And when they work together in these ways, then everyone benefits. And we've been able to see that over the past few years of the work that we do. Those are like the big things. We do lots of other smaller programs. We have programs in the Bedouin community to help. For example, we have a program now for helping Bedouin women to learn to be web developers. It's an incredible program. Karen was talking about the program working together. The reason that Eretz Ear doesn't run it anymore is because the government adopted it.
Yeah, and if the government adopts it, it's really can be countrywide, which is so different. It isn't dependent upon a certain area, which is amazing. So I want to go back to a couple quick things that you said. One is the small business support, and I love that. And I want to hear a little bit more about that, because you don't sort of think about that. That's a piece, and I think the collaborative piece among employers is and HR kind of working together, because recruitment can feel very competitive among employers. And so building that human capital as you're doing through skill development is so significant. So start with the small business owners and how you support them.
So Karen, I'll take small businesses maybe, and you can take the HR, or do you want to talk about small businesses?
I will try to talk about the small businesses, and when I suck, you will help me. The situation in the South, that there is a lack of jobs and high quality jobs. So many people find themselves open business because they want to work in their occupation. They don't have any other opportunities in the area, so they open a business. They're not a typical businessman or businesswoman. They just want to work. We try to help them run a business and to swap their mind to a business mind, start to think like a business people. And it's not easy because, if you know to do to sew skirts or dresses, very, very good. Doesn't say that you also know how to advertise it or how to sell it. And they need to be everything, the one that make and the one that run and the one that advertise. So we help them in few fields. One, we help them to build the network between themselves, because they are very lonely in their own business.
And you can sometimes cross-sell or cross-refer, which is also a great advantage.
Yeah. Usually they don't cooperate, make things together so much. So we arrange meetings, and we had a very big conference, and they told us we don't know each other, and we want to meet, and we want to do things together. We help them with shipping. When you are a small business in the periphery, it's very, very expensive to ship to the center of Israel. So we help them to reduce the cost. We help them to buy goods, to build good website, so they have an e-commerce website, to advertise in Facebook. This year, 2022, we just we just got the green light to continue. We're gonna build. We're gonna make a program with we call it SBA. We will build a website for. It will be a shop like a mall for all the businesses. Marketplace for 50 businesses, and most of them will be touristic. Even they are not touristic, we want them to have a story, and we will arrange tours. They can sleep in a Zimmer and then go to see this lady which cook Moroccan food, and then go to the one that makes soaps, help them to create their stories. And we want JNF people to come and meet them.
To add to that too is just, we talk about I like a lot of the work that we do that we haven't necessarily brought it up in this podcast yet, but is all about rebranding the North and the South, like making it, this is a place that people can come and live and you can have a really awesome life here. And so by encouraging people to come and visit and hear these stories and see these businesses and see that there's like an amazing life going on down here, we're really combating all of those negative stereotypes as well. So there's lots of layers to the work that we're doing. And I mean, listen, I don't know, I'm really biased. I love the Small Business Association because these people are also turning into our friends. And you realize the impact that you have if you impact one small business owner and then you impact their family and their neighborhood and their community. It has ripple effects for everyone. So
absolutely. And you're benefiting from the wonderful skills that are artistry that sometimes have been forgotten in different areas. And so talk about Rebrand, it's been a very popular thing in certain areas, and you're just making it easy for tourists, as you said, to create their whole itinerary, to go through a whole system in an area and learn the stories of these individuals, but benefit from their artistry and their skill and their craft. The beauty of putting everything in one spot is that the consumer gets to see multiple things at one time. And so it's the benefit of kind of cross-fertilization, for lack of a better word. So I might not have thought I would be interested in soap, but now I'm looking at a place to rent a room, and then I'm going to have, dinner somewhere, and then I'm going to look around and see what else is there in the craft world. So it really is a benefit actually to the consumer because it's a one-stop shop, and it's a benefit to the small business because they get to collaborate with each other, but also see everything in this beautiful package, and they're part of that. And so again, I think it reduces what you said, Karen, was the loneliness that can happen when you're starting a business and you feel a bit isolated, and you're already isolated because you're not in a big city. And so therefore, how do you accommodate that? And you've done a beautiful job of thinking that through. I want to highlight something else that I think makes you all stand out. And I really admire this. And I certainly hope most organizations, nonprofits do this, but you really do a thorough needs assessment. You don't just come up with an idea and say, oh, we think that's a good idea, which you could do, but you really think, is there a need out there? And if so, how do we back it up with data and then be able to accommodate this need? And that's where these programs then take hold, and it's like a seed that's planted and, will grow, and then eventually grows to potentially the government that says, hey, we want to do this everywhere. So I think that's amazing. So you're having this big event tomorrow, actually.
The program tomorrow is actually not the regular employers convention that we do. Tomorrow is actually the official launch of the Olim to the Negev emergency employment program for Ukrainian refugees. Good transition.
Perfect. Let's move into that because that's really the fundraising aspect of this podcast. Great.
I think there's something I want to say that we hope, because this emergency center for Ukrainians will run like 2 months, 3 months, something like this. And we hope the government will adopt all the programs we will build over there. And I hope we can show them that it's work.
That you're making a difference.
Yeah. Because we study in Israel, we study a lot from the immigration that was at the 90s from Russia. We hear very sad stories about how engineers were street cleaners. And this was very sad because people got far from their occupation and they couldn't go back because it takes very long time.
Right. My grandfather was an attorney in Vienna. And I said that, my mother had to leave as a small child and came to this country, thank goodness, or I wouldn't be here. However, could never practice law. Again, he was already older. It was too hard. And so he worked for a relative. And I think it was very dejecting and sad for him. So what you're doing to try to elevate folks who have skills or new skills that they can acquire is so important for both the society in which they are emigrating to, but also for their own self-esteem and self-worth. So there were no programs like this, in the 40s.
And even in the 90s, we see that there weren't. We see so much backlash from just here in Israel. And I think that it's for me, is also as an immigrant, but like not coming from the same situation at all, but having worked in the government with immigrants for 5 years in Beersheba, just seeing how I feel like everyone is trying to learn from those mistakes from the 90s. And I know that that's at the forefront of our head too. We can't make the same mistakes. This is a group of people who are very skilled, doctors and accountants and logistics people, and even there's like a plane engineer. Like I was talking to Anat today about this, and these people, they need to be working in high quality jobs, and that because that's not only is it a boost for them, and like you said, obviously like the boost of self-esteem and self-fulfillment for them, but also it's a huge boost to us in these areas of Israel. Like we're gaining a whole lot from them coming here as well. And I think that from the work that we've already done and hearing the mayors and the different localities ready to bring in people, you can see that people are aware of the benefit of not only doing a good thing by taking care of these people who need to be taken care of, but also know that they have what to give to this part of the country as well.
Even prior to this, in your general Lauder Employment Center programs, you are, through the relationship with Ben-Gurion University and other skill building and resource allocation and development, you are able to take individuals who wouldn't normally potentially be in a high-paying job and teaching them skills of current needs in the workplace in those areas where they then can sustain themselves quite well and are building those skills. And so you're revamping the way people are thinking about human capital. And I absolutely love that. So I want to make both of those points. It's sort of for high skills and for folks who haven't had the opportunities, you really are accommodating both. But because of this emergency, and I love what you said, the beauty of lessons learned is how not to repeat them. And so what it sounds like you're doing is both educating the public in Israel about how these folks are emigrating here and the needs that they have, but conversely, the benefit that Israel will receive by including them in the culture and in the work and in the employment environment. So I just think it's remarkable.
They can make here a big difference in the economic development in the Negev, because the industrial in the Negev, also the high-tech and the low-tech and the health, all of them need workers. So if the state of Israel will help these immigrants to get the license, everyone have to have a license. If you are an engineer, if you are a doctor, it took them years in the 90s. It took them years. And by these years, 6 years, 7 years, they have to do something else, Yeah, I also can tell you that we have many partners from the HR groups and from other organizations that they are the kids that came with their parents on the 90s. They are now, they have position, they are 30, 35, 40 now. They have position in the industrial, and some of them are HR. And we are talking all the time about that. And even tomorrow at the conference, there are two people like this. They will lead the conversations, and they will ask the audience, they ask the employers, how do we do different this time? Because my parents went through a really, really hard time. I'm so happy the minister of Klita and Aliyah will hear it, and everybody there will hear it, and they will understand we have to do something different. And we will create this different way in the Lauder Center. This is the mission.
Really amazing. And then part of that, I imagine that conference is a conversation about how are we going to do this together, so that it doesn't just totally sit on your shoulders. And at the same time, my push for people to donate is specifically for these refugees who are coming in and really need the support right now. And it benefits everybody. Because these folks have to leave a war-torn country right now. Whether they go back or not is a separate issue, and who knows. And you even have someone in your center, Anat, right, who I didn't she's not here, but I wanted to sort of do a shout out because she literally came, as you said, 3 weeks ago from Ukraine, although born in Israel, really spent all of her life in Ukraine, came back to Israel and has jumped in to work with you on behalf of refugees coming in from Ukraine. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah. And I think a huge part of tomorrow, and again, this is just, I feel kind of like I'm the cheerleader of what's going on over here. Like, we have this amazing professional staff that is just like crafting the program, doing the mapping, making it happen. But just to see that, tomorrow we have the Minister of Aliyah and Immigration coming to the Lauder Center here. We have the Welfare Ministry. We have lots of other people coming together to be on the same page, but also to be held accountable. Meaning we have to put it out there that we can't make the same mistakes, but here are the needs, and how are we actually going to fix them? And so tomorrow is a huge kickoff for that, and we're so excited that that's the official launch of a program that we started 2 weeks ago, because we had to get it done.
Yeah, it really sounds to me like an amazing opportunity. Tomorrow is an amazing opportunity to have an in-depth conversation with people who went through this experience, and the collaboration that you're bringing together will result, I hope, in this program really being firmly planted with supports and collaborators so that it can make a difference and do something different than before, where people are not waiting for these extended periods of time and really feeling embraced by Israel and what Israel has to offer, and what you said, what they can give, which is remarkable. So I want to take a step back, and I'd love for you to share one or two stories of the recipients, both prior to the refugee situation, and if there is a refugee story you want to share, please do. Share a story of where someone either interned or anything that you want that's kind of an aha moment where you thought, oh, I'm so in the right place doing the right thing.
And I know, Laura, I know you've heard this story before, but this is just something that sticks with me because this is someone who is still very present in my life, who we're connected now. But Maor Cohen was one of our interns in 2019. And how he got to the internship program was, not by fate, but, the dean of his college said, "You're a really great electrical engineering student. You've got to go to this program." And this is, the dean also kind of knowing his background being that he was a soldier in the IDF who was injured and had a huge gap in his resume. And this is something that had been haunting him for his entire pre-academic and academic career, wondering, how am I going to explain this? How is anyone going to, who's going to look at me through these years where I didn't have any experience, and how am I going to get a job? And so he joined our internship program, it has two components to it. There's the actual hands-on internship, and then there's also intense mentoring and career prep workshops that they go through. So his mentor really helped him build confidence in himself. And his place of internship is a really cool organization that is called Robotican. They build drones for the defense ministry here, so he gets to play with robots all day, and it's like a kid's dream. But I remember him telling me whenever I was just trying to, connect with some of our interns and hear their stories, and he said, you know what? This program saved my life. And when someone tells you that, you kind of stop for a second and you get chills. And I remember the person that I was with kind of teared up because we see this kid who didn't believe in himself, and he said, you guys brought me through this program. You helped me figure out a way to showcase my skills in the best way possible. I'm at this awesome internship, which he's, by the way, still working at. They built an entire department around him because they were like, oh, electrical engineering, we need this, let's grow our business. And he said, I don't care what time they tell me to come to work. I'm drumming on the steering wheel. I am so happy to go. I am in my element. And to see someone who, at first, when I first talked to him, he's like, I am shy, I can't do this. And now that he's shared his story, and he also sees how it encourages other people to be a part of what we're doing, then he just has opened up in so many ways. And that, for me, that's the moment that I said, well, we're on the right track.
We're doing the right thing. Oh my gosh. And it's not just a win-win in an individual way. I want to comment on this. It's really a win-win because if he can do it, others can do it. And that's what he's saying. And therefore, he wants to spread the word because he really feels, and I believe this, that this changed the trajectory of his own life and will for others, as well as the company for whom he works. So, because now they have this whole department that otherwise maybe they wouldn't even thought of or wouldn't have invested in or would have taken more time to do, right?
They've tripled in size. Amazing. They're doing, they're doing amazing. Karen, do you have a story?
I have so many stories. I have to choose one. Okay, so no, I will tell about the Bedouin sector.
And for my listeners who may not know or understand the Bedouin community, can you explain a little bit about that?
The Bedouin community, they are Muslim. They live mainly in the south of Israel. There are Bedouins that live in the north of Israel. They're all over this area of the Middle East. They're traditionally a nomadic people. So there have been, obviously, and that's a whole podcast in and of itself, but this is a population that, as it is now in 2022, there's something like 300,000 Bedouin in the Negev. They have doubled, the population has doubled in the past decade. The median age is 17. 80% of the population is under the age of 30. Dropout rates are astronomical. These are people that some live in recognized villages, some live in unrecognized villages. They don't have the same access to educational systems, even running water and electricity in a lot of cases. And so we're dealing with a very, very impoverished population, totally marginalized. And so there are lots of challenges in the things that come along with poverty and the drugs and the violence and everything. And it's something that we're dealing with in our day-to-day. There was unfortunately a terror attack in Beersheba last week that came from a Bedouin community. That doesn't mean that every Bedouin is a terrorist, not at all. But there are a lot of issues, and for us, in order to make the Negev strong, we have to take care of everyone who's here.
There's huge problems with the Bedouin sector, especially in the Negev, but most of them come from unemployment. We started this program 3 years ago in Rahat, in the Bedouin sector, to help entrepreneurs that want to develop something technological, to help them go through a process that helps them to build their idea, to create their idea. So this program, we start with teams, like 2, 3, 4 people together that develop the idea. So in one program, we have like 8 groups like this. I think only 3% of the working Arabs are working in the high tech, and this is something like 1% from the high tech workers. So it's not common at all. But there's still the talent and the skills over there of some of the people. So when we start, we had almost only men in the groups. The first one was almost only men. The women were Jewish. We had one Jewish woman. And now we opened 2 months ago. We opened the 3rd program, and we have half of the group is women. And yesterday they came back from, we took some graduates from this program to Dubai to see the expo and to do some business meetings. So at this group was, I think, 4 women. And this is amazing to see them because it's so much unique. And their families don't like it. They prefer them to be teachers and something close to the house and not to involve with the men and big company. But now we see more and more women at this program, and they succeed, and they recruit money, and they have investors. When you see this one, she was really shy, and now she's a businesswoman with technological patent skills. So this is amazing. It's very hard to do change, to make a difference at the Bedouin sector, but this is like a so small step, but it's step for few people, and it's really amazing.
It may start out small, but then there's potential growth. And then they have the ability to sustain themselves within their community or outside. And more people will hopefully adapt that mindset, because it's changing a mindset where they have internalized that, and you're giving them an opportunity to shift that mindset and shift their lives in a particular way. And I think it's quite moving, frankly, because you are incredibly inclusive. And I want my listeners to understand that, because this fundraiser, although earmarked toward emergency refugee support for Ukraine or Ukrainian refugees, it really does support all of your efforts in Israel, because of the work that you do sustains the individuals who have been marginalized, and refugees, regardless of their skill set. As you said, the example of the Russians in the 90s were marginalized to a certain extent because they couldn't get licensed. And so rather than repeat that, you're really working toward, how do we integrate? How do we reduce the feeling of isolation? How do we bring in? And it creates a win-win for the individual, for their family, and for our society. And I would actually propose, in a very broad way, the world at large. And the reason being is so much good in terms of technology, healthcare, water support comes out of Israel. So why not bring that to the world? And so a donation for my birthday fundraiser actually contributes to our global society.
I would love to add, just because I think that it's so important whenever you're talking about donating to this particular project. Right now, this is an emergency project, but we see that, while we would all love that tomorrow the fighting would stop, it's probably not going to. We also see that there's a huge increase in the number of Russian Jews who are immigrating to Israel. And this is going to be something that we're going to need to be dealing with as a nation for the coming years. Meaning that if we can get support for this program, then it can give it longevity and help us to help a very large wave of people who are going to inevitably be coming in here.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, it sends a message to the government that if you pilot this, as you said before, they will help and take it on. And they're going to support it in some way. But donations are needed because there are just so many people in need. And I don't know if you have, outside of Anat's story, a story with a recent refugee and how you've at least reached out. I don't expect that there's a result yet because, of course, this is so new. Stories of people needing to come to Israel and what that's been like for them, because they'll need housing, food, all kinds of things.
Most of them doesn't have their papers because they didn't took it, and they have to do all this bureaucracy arrangement to get their working permit and their ID and everything. And that's what they are doing now. Also, most of them came without their husbands and their sons because they couldn't come. So they don't know what's going on if they stay or if here. They are really worried about their husbands in the war over there. And so it's a hard time to take decisions. But Anat told me yesterday that some people that she met that are ready to go to work. They want to work. They have to work. The Olim and the refugees, they have to work. They didn't come with a lot of money. They left their car, they left their homes. They came with nothing. They just got out. It's a very traumatic immigration.
And so Anat is really leading that piece.
And Anat is
and she herself had to come. So this is like...
Exactly. Anat is just like this, we liked it. We've been saying like, she's our first success story, because like she came and she got a job. Like we found her through the close work that we do with the Immigration and Absorption Unit of Beersheba. Like she's incredible. I hope you guys get to meet her a little bit more. And, she's presenting tomorrow in front of the minister. I'm so proud of her in Hebrew that she's having to kind of dust off a little bit. But, she's going out in the field too. This is a woman who she is so determined. She's like, I'm not going to let anything stop me. I've got to help these people to have a good integration. And it's someone who understands everything that they're going through because she just went through it.
Yeah, I want to say another thing. You said we are doing the work, but you let us do our work. And I tell you, NGOs are really fast. Something started 2 weeks ago, and now we are in the field, and Anat is over there. And, the the Economic Bureau from the government, they ask us, how do you do it? How do you meet them? How do you have all this listing of people? We don't know where to find them. And this is NGOs, and this is what you do. You give us the resources to work and to be there, and even to teach the government how to work. They really ask us now how to do it. So we have to thank you.
It's there are times in our lives when we can roll up our sleeves and be actively involved. And there are times in our lives when even giving $1 is something. And I feel like it reduces, as I said in my intro, the feeling of being helpless in a situation that is very dire and hopeless, because you give help and you provide hope. And if there's a little way that I can do that through helping to raise funds that are directed to this effort, I'm all in, because I can't just get on a plane. I don't think I'd be that useful either. Get on a plane and get there to help. But one day, it's great to be able to be in both of those arenas at times where you can roll up your sleeves and times where you can, write a check or put $1 in the box, whatever it is. So I'm grateful that there are folks like you and all of your collaborators who are willing to open up your arms literally and welcome people in because there is no choice. It is the human thing to do. And we live in environments where if we don't take care of ourselves in terms of a collective, who in fact are we? Anything else that you haven't talked about about this program, about the Lauder Employment Center that you'd like to share? I feel like we've given listeners a really good understanding of what it is and what the emergency is right now. But I just want to ask you if there's any other thing you'd like to share before we move into the Gutsies.
All around the Negev and all around Israel, there's many, many, many NGOs and organizations and the government and everyone, and they all feel in competition. We compete on resources, we compete on people. In what we do is we believe that if everybody is working together, you have to achieve and to do more impact. So we do it. We try to collaborate all the organizations in the Negev to work together for help small businesses, to work together to help young adults at risk, to work together. Even now, all these conference, all the organizations are coming, and the employers and the government bureaus, because we believe that we have to make a system to help the ecosystem, to build a home, to all of us to work together, and with no ego, with no competition, how we believe it's supposed to work. So that's what we do in all the fields.
So we're going to go into our quick and gutsies. So first question is a little bit tricky because we've been talking about donating, so it doesn't quite fit, but we'll just do it anyway because I think it's important. What is at the top of your wish list for the Lauder Employment Center or for this emergency fund? However, it can't be money or resources. So what's at the top of your wish list if it weren't money or resources?
Listen, I think that like one of the most important things that and it's like, this is my actual answer, but it's funny because we're getting it by being on your podcast, is exposure, is to just have people hear about the story, about what we're doing, and understand that we're on the map. For so long when we were doing the work at the Lauder Center, we're like, employment's not sexy. And it's like not totally sexy, but it is such a huge cornerstone to the work that we're doing, to the work that, to any working society. And so I think just the ability to tell our story and hear both the rational side behind it, but also the emotional side behind it, because there really is a lot of both. I think that's the biggest gift we could get.
Karen, what's at the top of your wish list?
This is very similar. It's a little bit similar. I want you to know what we are doing and tell us all the time you are on the right way, you are doing the right thing, even to speak about it and hear your point of view and to be involved in what we are doing.
So if you were to think of a song that describes the Lauder Employment Center, what would it be? I know that's hard to make. It's like eyes. We're like, ah.
Oh my God, I know. I think I know. We Are the Champions by Queen.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Okay, that makes it sexy. That could be your theme song. I love it.
There we go. Done.
Love it.
Karen, I have to hear what you...
I thought about it, about always look on the bright side of life.
I love that
because
song.
We have to look at the bright side, so many hard things and crises, and we have to look on the bright side.
Otherwise you get mired and stuck and you can't see your way out. So you have to see that there's a light or a bright side. And I love that. Great choices. I love it. Share with me, where I think you've shared a lot of this, but I'm going to ask it in a slightly different way. What makes the Lauder Employment Center gutsy? Because you're gutsy.
Karen, you know what gutsy is?
I'm asking you.
يعني מאמיץ, איך זה שאנחנו עם כל כך הרבה אומץ?
Gutsy, taking chances, taking risks, chutzpah a little bit, but with a little even chutzpah, more, right? Yeah. Little more than chutzpah. I think we all, I don't know how we gather together, all these people. We all come with a lot of passion to what we're doing. A passion to the Negev, a passion to employment, to an economic development. We all, community social workers. So we know you have to work hard to get a small step ahead. and we love what we're doing. I think this is magic.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot who said that every small step is imperative to really have the biggest impact. It's not always the biggest splash. It's those small steps, those incremental steps that actually make the difference. I love that. Megan, what about you? What makes LEC gutsy?
I think it's the ability to take on some of these very large challenges that we've taken on. I remember sitting in this conversation that we had 2 weeks ago about working with the Ukrainian refugees, and I felt my heart beating very fast and going like, how are we going to do this? And to just like have people like Karen, like just take a deep breath and like, we're going to do it. And so, and it happens like we're doing it with the Bedouin population. We're doing it with, hopefully with the Arab population in the north as well. We're doing it like I feel like it's like kind of David and Goliath, where this teeny tiny little thing against all these crises and all these challenges, and not against the government, but in front of the government, saying, oh, we've got to make these things happen. And then to see it happen with such grace, and again, like with the collaborations, and also because it's like I think we're gutsy because we're all women too doing this. So like we're not gonna back down. We're here, and like we're going to stand up against all of the odds and make a great impact.
And by the way, you did this in the midst of planning a wedding. I have to add, I don't know how you did it. And talk about grace. You did it gracefully, I would say, and with a lot of fun, because I got to be on your Zoom wedding. It was wonderful.
She had the best wedding. I was dancing and everybody was so happy.
I'm so jealous. I did get to be a little, on the Zoom as a witness, and I was so grateful to just be part of that energy. It came through the screen, which is really another piece of you. And maybe it's just that energy that you both evoke, but you're just in it. You're in it for the right reason, and you're guided by that. And I just think it's that's something to be incredibly proud of. So next question. What is something that outsiders, or maybe even a few insiders, don't know about the Lauder Employment Center?
I've got something silly. Can I be
silly?
silly?
Oh, this is a conversation.
We have an office cat named Zelda. We've tried to adopt her out. We have found her 3 amazing homes. She comes back to us every time.
I love it.
Every time.
So she loves that energy, She just loves that energy. And yes, to the point that Karen made before about always look at the bright side, I think if you don't have humor or you don't have moments where you can laugh, the alternative is incredibly painful. And so we have to have moments where we have that kind of connection, and humor is that connection. So I love it. Zelda, can't wait to meet Zelda one day. Karen, what about you? What's something that outsiders and maybe even a few insiders don't know about the Lauder?
I think outsiders can't really understand the relationship between the people that work in the Lauder Center and how we speak the same language. Some people ask me, the family, friends, what you doing? What you doing? Show me how you changed the Negev.
Yeah.
I said, no, you have to be around people that understand this passion and speak in the same words. And I think this is the magic in the Lauder Center.
If you could get one celebrity or influencer to talk about the Lauder Employment Center everywhere, who might that be?
Where are these good questions coming from? My goodness. Oh, wow. That's a hard one. I think we need Gal Gadot to be talking about us. Like,
Yes,
come on.
We'll talk about a strong woman, Wonder Woman. Come on. Right?
Wonder Woman with a whole lot of reach. And so,
reach.
Gal Gadot, if you're listening, we would love for you to be our presenter.
Yeah, we have to hashtag her. We'll try to see if we can get her to pay attention. Yeah.
You had to ask us this question before so we can come with answers. I think if the last Nasi Reuven Rivlin, the last president of Israel. He had this
he had a very famous speech.
and he spoke about the tribes in Israel. In Israel, we have different tribes from the Aliyot. We don't want these Ukrainians to be the next tribe. We want them to be part of the integrate in the Israeli society. So if he can speak about us.
How should folks, I want to talk a little bit about how they should donate, how they should reach you, how they should learn more about you.
Wonderful. So we have an active Facebook page. So following us at the Lauder Employment Center is really one of the best ways to go. We have a LinkedIn page. Our LinkedIn is a little English and Hebrew, so maybe a little less because we really are also trying to reach the beneficiaries here in Israel with our LinkedIn page. So you can absolutely check out our LinkedIn. Facebook is the really solid place to be. And then there's a really easy way to donate if you would like to through either your personal page, Laura, or our Lauder Center page through the Jewish National Fund. Because we are an Israeli nonprofit and because we are such big partners with the Jewish National Fund, so all of the donations that we get from the United States come through the Jewish National Fund. So I'm sure you can post a link to that. There's an easy way to donate via credit card or check. Also, if you just want to be in touch with one of us to figure out, I'm happy for Laura for you to share my email address so that people can be in touch just to talk about and see how they can get involved. We're happy to make that happen.
I will definitely post your email address also if you're comfortable with that, but I am going to open a page as soon as the podcast comes out, and it really is for my birthday. No April Fool on that one. And to know that it is in fact a holiday in Ukraine was so startling to me because I didn't know that connection. So it's even more powerful that the more folks who would be willing to donate on behalf of my birthday, I would be so touched and honored. And as everybody knows, this podcast is completely funded by me, and I do it as, for me, a passion project, as you talked about, and a public service for folks to learn about places like the Lauder Employment Center and what you're doing. And you are well under the $10 million mark. You are tiny, about a little over $1 million, I think, $1.5 million. And so I want to make that known. So you are trying to do enormous amounts of work on very few dollars. I just want to take a moment and thank you both for spending so much time with me and sharing your personal passion, the depth of your knowledge in the areas of employment and connection and collaboration, the work that is taking place now with Ukrainian refugees and what you're trying to do to build further collaboration, as well as all of the work that the Lauder Employment Center has done for Jews and non-Jews in the state of Israel. And it's just remarkable.
Thank you so much, Laura. Listen, you have been a friend of ours for a very long time, and to have this honor to be on your podcast for your birthday is just, we're over the moon with the opportunity. So thank you so much.
It's the first time I meet you, but through the Zoom, you look such a good person.
I have good energy for the Zoom.
The smile, your face, the way you speak. I really enjoyed speaking with you and meet you.
Same, Karen. And one day I really hope to come there and visit you and spend a little bit more time, learn more deeply about the things that you do. I have a sense of it. I have an understanding because of my own background, but really to be in the weeds with you would be an honor and a privilege, because there's nothing greater than seeing the impact of donations live in real time. And you don't have to convince me. I'm a believer. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're interested in sponsoring a small and gutsy episode to keep it going, please reach out to me or buy us a coffee at www.gutsy buymeacoffee.com/small-and-gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, meaning we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, the volunteers, my co-producer, sound engineer, and composer, the amazing Pavel Franson, my infographic creator extraordinaire, Sonia Fizek, Nate Addy for the exceptional logo, and all the friends and family who have guided and inspired me. A very special thank you to my biggest champion, without whom I could not have created this project, my very best friend and a true sounding board. Thanks, Mark Witkoff. Thanks for being there. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Witkoff, and thanks for listening.